Greetings, everyone, and what a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Dr. Wang, for everything that you have contributed to Qigong and Tai Chi in the world. And a little bit, just a tiny bit of background on me, and then I'm going to show you some PowerPoint program, and then following that, we'll do a little practice. So my professional background is a doctor of Chinese medicine. So from 1975 to about 2015, I was in clinical practice. But during the entire time, I have been a practitioner of Qigong and Tai Chi. And eventually I became the director of the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. You can look that up if you want to. Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. So my original Chinese medicine training was based on the idea that the humans in China began doing Qigong-like practices a really long time ago, like 100,000 years ago. And so now we have the current version. And since then, actually very recently, Tai Chi has been added to, we could maybe even think of certain types of Tai Chi as a kind of Qigong, working with the Qi. So with that, let me show you my screen and off we go.
You're welcome.
All right, so the concept here is, as you know, or many of you know, when we say, let's do Tai Chi or let's do Qigong, typically we say, play. Let's play Qigong. Let's play Tai Chi. There's some real power in the whole idea of having the concept that we're working on here be something around something enjoyable and accessible and playful. So my objectives here is to point out that the most profound medicine is produced within the human being for free to inform and inspire on what could be the most mysterious yet effective forms of exercise, etc. Clarify the difference between going to class and having a practice, very important, and to excite you about sharing accessible Qigong and Tai Chi for health, healing, and longevity. So I've given lectures on this topic to the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, the Veterans Administration, and all these other organizations. And the reason why I mention that is because Qigong and Tai Chi are becoming very, very, shall we say, relevant in the modern world. So there's this beautiful image here that comes from Dr. Wang and Dr. Timothy Tin. And thank you, Dr. Tin, for your cardio presentation. Fantastic. So the idea is that almost everybody in the world could be doing some kind of easy Qigong and Tai Chi for recreation and pleasure. If we step that up a notch, we go to increasing performance. We step that up a notch, and now we're talking about health and functional capacity. So actually, the medical application of Qigong, which is a lot of what my presentation is about here today. We take that up another level, and now we're talking about sustained functional capacity or longevity, and then take that up another level, and we get to the wisdom, the Qigong and Tai Chi wisdom realm, having to do with philosophical notions that arise from Taoism and Buddhism and even quantum physics. Very powerful to realize that this Qigong and Tai Chi can be, shall we say, leveraged or utilized at all of these different levels. So the foundational keys, of course, are in the principles, and one of the great foundational principles is the three treasures. Three treasures being the yin of the earth, the yang of the sky, and the living beings and everything that's in between heaven and earth. Another version of the three treasures, an operational version of the three treasures, is body adjustment, breath adjustment, and mind adjustment. And so these are the foundational features of Qigong practice. And then the four dimensions of Qigong, sometimes we talk about it in a 4 instead of a 3, which adds self-applied massage to the practice. Then, in addition to that, these primary powers, setting aside time. Perhaps you know that one of the definitions of Gong Fu is to take time to pursue a skill, any skill. So taking time and then focusing. So in other words, not worrying about the complexity of life, but actually being present to the practice as it's happening. And another way to say that is to have a practice, because to have a practice, it takes time, and to bring intention to the practice. And intention is really the same as focus. Super important to understand, and maybe you already know this, Qigong is not an exercise. It is a unique, mindful combination of the body, the breath, and consciousness. So it's a holistic, not just a body-focused thing. Qigong and Tai Chi have deep philosophical considerations. They have immense effect on the character and the personality and the emotional self. There are 10,000 approaches to Qigong, according to scholars. This is like scholars in China declare that there are 10,000 approaches to Qigong and Tai Chi. I met a doctor from Korea who said that there were 35,000 versions of Qigong and Tai Chi. It doesn't matter. There's just a lot going on, and a lot of people have been contributing for a really long time. So we are looking at just a few especially effective practices here today, which we will be practicing before we conclude. Time is interesting because according to physics, there is no time. It's just a dimension like the dimensions of space plus time. We call that space-time. One of the interesting things about time is that when you're enjoying yourself, they say that time flies when you're having fun. And the time goes slow when you're depressed. And how do you spend your time? So in other words, if you spend time doing Qigong and Tai Chi, now, later in your life, you will spend less time in doctor's offices and waiting around in pharmacies to get medicines that you otherwise would not even need. And then focus. You know, how does focus work? Well, there are different parts of the brain. And if you can get a hold of, if we can get a hold of ourselves, then worry less, stress less, and shall we say, engage more fully in focused study and focused work and a focus on efficient sleep and a focus on nutritional food and avoiding relationships with people who um, depreciate our capacity to feel good about ourselves. So all of those things are distractions. All of those things can be distractions. And so cultivation of the mind, the heart, mind, through Qigong and Tai Chi is a very powerful way to be able to increase personal efficiency in addition to being healing and reducing stress. So the practices that we're going to be doing here are from a book that I wrote called The Healer Within. And The Healer Within is very easily accessible on Amazon. And you can probably even peek inside of it if you want to. We also have this video library that is available if you want to check the website, iiqtc.org. And the goal is to be able to support people in having a practice that can be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We could argue that the practice is more effective if you do it longer, but most people don't think that they have time. So if we make it easier and more accessible, then they can have an experience which will then invite them to participate more fully with extended periods of practice time. So first, before we go too much further, some big questions that people have, and these are the kinds of questions that they ask at the American Medical Association and the American Hospital Association and so forth. And so, and we'll just focus on Qigong, but as you know, Tai Chi and Qigong are pretty much based on the same principles. Is Qigong proven safe by science? Yes, I actually am the lead author on a very important research review that was published numerous years ago that says that Qigong and Tai Chi have been proven safe and effective. Effective meaning that the influence of the practice is positive relative to certain disease states and so forth. I'll show you a slide on that. And are there other institutions who are involved in using these practices? The answer is yes to that. The Mayo Clinic, the Veterans Administration, National Council on Aging, YMCA, school systems, hospital systems, the military. So what is the how of health and healing? And this is according to Chinese medicine, of course. The how healing works is that the qi is enabled, amplified, and circulating. And so anything that we can do to amplify and circulate qi, which is actually, if you really think about it, qi in a tree is the function of the tree. The qi in a solar system is the function of the solar system. The qi in a human being is the function of the human being. So the qi of the heart is the function of the heart. The qi of the liver, the function of the liver. So this idea of qi, while in the Western world it seems unusual, it's actually a very powerful and quite intriguing view of how healing and human function actually occurs. And through this whole process, you're all probably very aware that the most profound medicine isn't pharmacy from a drugstore or a hospital. The most profound medicine is the resources that we produce within our own being. And how do we produce those resources? By moving the body and nutrifying the body. So we can say, well, but you have to buy the food. The answer, though, to that is that when you ingest this, it becomes a part of the medicine within. So then the question is it more expensive to buy good food? The answer is actually there's quite a bit of research on this, that it's not actually that much more expensive to buy good food. So movement and mental focus and nourishment and rest all go to producing a medicine within us that is actually cost-free. And by the way, I'm having some golden monkey here today to celebrate our time together. So don't forget to hydrate. Now, in Western medicine, we only have one way to do medicine, and that is to diagnose and treat diseases. That's very short-sighted, and really we're seeing how very short-sighted that is. In the Asian tradition, but really in all the shamanic and indigenous traditions, there are two systems of medicine. One is to resolve the pathology. That's the same thing. It's to diagnose and treat the disease. But the other one, which is the more important one, is to maximize the righteous chi, means to maximize function. And it's pretty easy to maximize function. It's true that Western medicine is actually evolving, and we now have holistic medicine, integrative medicine, functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, precision medicine, and all of these tend to push the idea of wellness and personal behavior in addition to medical interventions. So now there's this question of what is medical Qigong? And there are so many definitions of medical Qigong that the National Qigong Association has basically declared that that defining medical Qigong is a bad idea, because some people think that medical Qigong requires a diagnosis. Other people don't. Some people think that medical Qigong is something that a doctor does to a person. That's not always true. Some people think that medical Qigong is Qigong that you do to maximize your well-being. So I think that the National Qigong Association has really, shall we say, made the right decision to not define medical Qigong. For the purposes of the National Qigong Association, the words clinical Qigong are used instead, so that all the definitions of medical Qigong can flourish in the world. In Chinese medicine, qi is the single underlying feature of all health and disease. In Western medicine, function is the underlying feature of all health and disease. So qi equals function. And one of the interesting things in the Western world now is that there is another way of describing the underlying major problem in all diagnostic categories is inflammation and oxidation. Oxidation being the depreciation of function. Oxidation is not oxygenation. Oxygenation means having oxygen, using oxygen well. Oxidation means depreciating cellular capacity through a wide array of biochemical reactivity. So the three treasures, we talked about that. Let's talk about it again. So the heaven above, the earth below, and the life in between, three treasures. The body, the mind, the spirit, three treasures. Then on the left-hand side, the yang above, the yin below, and the Tai-chi in between. All these are considered to be three treasures. And so just delineating a little more clearly, body is posture and movement. Breath is not only the breathing process, but observing the breathing process and modifying the breathing process. So right now, we could take a deep breath at longer, slower, deeper, deep breath. And then we could let that out very, very slowly. And both that longer, slower inhalation and that longer, slower exhalation are contributing to the activation of a wide array of physiological functions, which we're not going to detail here today, or maybe there's a slide for that and we'll see if there is, and let's go on. So the concept with the body, like just notice your posture right now. Notice your breathing right now. The mind, of course, is focusing on what we're discussing here, unless you're, scrolling and carrying on with other stuff while we're doing this. So the discipline of Qigong and the disciplines associated with Tai Chi are associated with noting or noticing and then modifying. So check your posture. How would you modify your posture to give your organs the room that they need to be able to function clearly? And how would you keep your posture erect for the duration of your entire life? Breath. Any moment in the day, you can find yourself breathing shallowly. Why? Because you can survive by breathing shallowly. But to thrive, to actually boost up, to amplify, to enhance, maximize, noticing the breath and deepening the breath or modifying the breath, because you can also go faster. You can do fast breath practices. Those have specific physiological effects. Slow breath practices, those have physiological effects. And then with the mind, research basically has proven that average humans think negative thoughts somewhere around 70 to 80% of the time, and positive thoughts typically 10 to 20% of the time or less. And so this whole idea of being able to cultivate consciousness and cultivate character through Qigong and Tai Chi and Kung Fu and studying tea, studying herbs and nutrition, developing calligraphy skills. Well, all of these things are ways of cultivating the heart and the mind, or the heart mind. Very powerful. And then the ancients talk all the time about elixir, like the golden elixir of longevity and immortality. Wow, how cool is that? And so then what are we getting into when we think of elixir relative to think of it this way? Think the word drug, then think the word medicine, then think the word elixir. Which one feels safer? Well, drugs, almost every drug is not safe. Maybe you could use drugs a little bit for a little while, but wow, why would you? Anyway, it's terrible about the drugs, every kind of drug. What about a medicine? Well, a medicine is typically associated in in European consciousness with treating a disease. So why would we need to have a medicine if we're using the medicine within? I think you know what I mean. So the elixir is the highly refined. And when we talk about the inner alchemy, we're talking about highly refined internal chemistry, highly refined internal thinking, highly refined emotional responsiveness, and a highly refined a relationship with the transcendental aspect of our being. Wow, that's just amazing. So this is this would be a boring conversation if we looked up all these bits of research. So I'm just suggesting that there's a lot of research on the effect of Qigong and Tai Chi on the body, a lot of research on the effect of breath practice and movement on the breath, and a lot of research on how these practices influence the mind and the brain. And so I'm thinking about neuroplasticity, the whole idea of brain plasticity, learning new things, novelty, the the feature of personal behavior that has the strongest influence on maximizing brain plasticity is to be doing things that are novel, things that we don't always do, like brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand and do eye exercises. Whoever does eye exercises, set aside time to do meditation. These things are very novel for a lot of people. And one of the most novel things that a human being can do is Tai Chi. Tai Chi, I mean, Qigong is simpler, often simpler, and Tai Chi is with stepping and alternating hand movements and so forth. Tai Chi is incredibly novel for most people. So then the four dimensions, we've already talked about three. The fourth one is massage. So we use the body practice, breath practice, and mind practice to amplify the chi, and then use the massage to direct the chi to the parts of the human system that need it the most. And so then people say, well, you know, what do I do and what order do I do it in and how long do I do it and all that stuff. And these four dimensions of practice are intended to be a part of a practice. In other words, going to a class, reading a book, watching a video, none of that is having a practice. Having a practice means that you can do the practice on your own, that you can decide what to do next, that you don't care too much whether you got it perfectly. So, because it's not a contest, it's a practice. And so this is all arranged once one has a personal cultivation practice, it's all arranged by that person. Some other party does not tell us what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. When we have a practice, we are modifying and enhancing the extent to which we've learned what we've learned and then have adopted it into our lives. That's where the power is. So just going through the four parts, movement and breath, easeful movement and coordinating the breath with easeful movement or even sitting still activates the chi, which is another way of saying activating function and turning on the medicine within. Then the mind focus supports us in neutralizing distraction, because if you do a practice and you're just worrying the whole time, that's kind of unfortunate, and the extent to which it maximizes function, is depreciated because worry turns on adrenaline, and adrenaline then depreciates function and causes inflammation and oxidation. And so this whole idea of bringing ourselves into the present is, uh, amazing. And then self-applied massage directs the chi and functionality to the parts that need it the most. So what we're saying here is that the ultimate elixir is present within our own being as an invisible resource known as chi, or what we can call function. And it just happens for free. You can't buy these elixirs that are made in the human system. You can't buy them. You can only make them for free. So here's some science from my own research over all these years. This is actually the study that I referred you to earlier that was published in 2010. Yes, it's a long time ago, but it was definitely a watershed in research and had a lot to do with things that happened next in our society. And I like to believe the idea that I've some small part of how Qigong and Tai Chi have become more like household ideas in this American culture. And I won't linger on the fine details, but at the time there were only 77 randomized controlled trials. Only in the period between 1993 and 2008, only 77 randomized controlled trials. And interestingly, if you look at this neuropsychology, that's everything to do with how the brain works and how our psychology works. And so Tai Chi and Qigong were proven to be effective and safe for emotional conditions and so forth. The next largest category was falls prevention and balance. And then the next largest category of randomized controlled trials was cardiopulmonary effects. But then if you put immune function and inflammation plus immune function, the blue one and the purple one together, that gives you a pretty high number too. So there's a lot of influence of Qigong and Tai Chi on immune function. But this is the most interesting thing. And even this slide is outdated because we're not in 2015. We are now in almost 10 years later. But look at the increase from 77 trials from 1990 to 2010. That's 30 years. No, that's not 30 years. That's 20 years. And then you take the same, so that's 3 studies a year. That's the one. So that's 3 randomized control trials every year. In the period of 5 years, so in other words, the first one was 20 years, 3 studies a year. The second one was 5 years, 30 studies every year. So money is pouring in to Qigong and Tai Chi research, and it has just continued to increase. Here's just a couple of studies that I'm very involved with. This one was funded by the National Council on Aging. The method that was utilized by these 400 subjects is called Tai Chi Easy. Tai Chi Easy, which is basically an accessible, brief, principle-based form of Tai Chi. And one of the most interesting things about this study was that 89% of the people in the study said that they liked it. That's 89% of 400 people. But actually 91% of them said they would repeat it, which means that 2% of 400 subjects actually didn't like it, but they're going to do it again anyway. And obviously that's because they think that there's some value. Here's the physiology. Increased delivery of oxygen and nutrition. Why? Because when we relax, the blood vessels get expand, and these resources, oxygen and nutrition, are penetrating further into the system more efficiently and in greater volume. Acceleration of water, lymph, that means to actually remove metabolic byproducts from the system, as well as the lymph removes metabolic byproducts, but it also is a part of how certain factors are being delivered. And it also has to do with the discharge of the immune function. So in other words, when the immune cells kill disease cells, those all that is being shipped out, all of that immune function is being activated by the acceleration of internal water, which is largely called lymph. Increases the relaxation response, has a very positive effect on what is typically called homeostatic capacity, which means the ability for the human system to return to homeostasis, shift in the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are literally drugs or elixirs that are being produced within the human system and are increased in their positive effects, because there are negative neurotransmitters that are associated with adrenaline, which depreciates function over time. And and then there's the positive neurotransmitters, which are healing and restorative neurotransmitters. And so Qigong and Tai Chi have that effect. We talked about the immune function. And then finally, it is widely known that any kind of practice that includes relaxation, and when you put relaxation with gentle movement, so there's Qigong and Tai Chi, that has a very positive effect on the DNA, that's the telomeres in the DNA. And then mitochondrial fitness, which is the mitochondria is where the chemical energy for living is produced and circulated. And so Qigong and Tai Chi increase the fitness and the ability of the mitochondria to do that very powerful function. Then people ask, what's the difference between Qigong and Tai Chi? I'm going to do this really briefly because we want to get to the end of the slides as soon as possible. But Qigong is more than 10,000 years, and Tai Chi is recent, 500 years. Operationally, Qigong is easy and bilateral. Both hands are doing the same thing, and typically the feet are static. Where with Tai Chi, it's harder because the movements are contralateral, meaning that one hand is doing something different than the other hand, and there's stepping associated with these movements. Very complex, excellent for the brain. Functionally, Qigong harmonizes the autonomic nervous system and increases vagal tone. Vagal tone being the parasympathetic aspect of the nervous system. And then Qigong and Tai Chi, as I said earlier, because it's novel, very novel, enhances brain plasticity. And, all kinds of other things happen in Tai Chi, including when you speed it up, like we just did a little while ago with cardio Tai Chi. That's so cool. And this is just another study, and I'll read this very quickly from Harvard. It is becoming increasingly clear that psychosocial stress, that's the stress that we experience in our lives, can manifest as system-wide perturbations, means distress of cellular process, generally increasing oxidative stress, we talked about oxidation, and promoting a pro-inflammatory milieu. And we talked about the underlying cause of all disease is inflammation. And here's some of the studies that studied this. So the Benson team was Harvard, the Lee team was China, and the Sharma team is in India, and Sudarshan Kriya, a kind of yoga, is very similar to Qigong. So we have this fountain of youth in our own system, and so the fountain of youth is not in Florida, it's not in South America, it's in here. It's within us. And so we have the capacity to reduce the rate of cellular death by maximizing function, and then that equals longevity. And we can talk about immortality if you want to. So let's practice. And I'm going to unshare my screen. Let's see if I could just get this to be. If you want to stand, that's probably the better way to do this, of course. So we have about 15 minutes to do a little practice session, and we will practice the 4 dimensions of medical Qigong. And of course, if you are a Qigong practitioner yourself, then you have your own idea about how this can go and how you would like to do it. And we'll just do it how I'm doing it today, but not necessarily because that's how it should be done. First, we'll align ourselves between heaven and earth. Means to acknowledge that there's a part of myself which is like the boundlessness, and that there's a part of ourselves that's like the earth, like the body. So if we think about the body being the yin and the spirit being the yang, then what is it in the middle? Because there's 3 treasures, right? There's a picture of it right there. Tai Chi in the middle is associated with the heart mind, and the heart mind makes decisions, and the heart mind has emotions, and the heart mind is the aspect of ourself which is philosophical. The heart mind is the part of ourself which is reactive and tense, and the heart mind is the part of ourself that we call upon to cultivate serenity and acceptance. Then 3 treasures. So posture, sink, lengthen, lift head, shoulders drop, fingers soft, and then think to yourself, what else about my body can I soften or relax? Like fang song. Then bring your attention to your breath, and we'll be linking the gestures to the breath. Breathe in. So this is reminding ourselves that we're probably going to be doing the movements fairly slowly because we are doing full, deep, relaxed breaths. Mind focus. Put your past into one of your hands, either hand. Put your future into the other hand, either hand. And then think to yourself, when you come to prayer hands, which is a kind of way of being very present. Think to yourself something like, now, on purpose, with intent, I bring my attention to the present moment for the duration of this practice. Then open. Open means shift your weight to one side, step out. And let's do the posture, breath, and mind thing, or let's just do the posture, sink, lengthen, lift, drop, soften. And we're going to start with a gesture where the palms are forward and breathing in, and you can change these breathing patterns as much as you want. Breathing in, raising your hands to about the level of your shoulders, turn palms down, sink hands down, sink body down. Turn palms forward, breathe in or out, your choice. Lift up. So I'm lifting up and my hands are coming up, and now my hands face down and I'm lowering down and sinking down, and hands drifting down. Slowly, palms forward, lifting up, big breath in. Exhale, relax deeply, going deeper and deeper into relaxation. We'll do this one more time. And typically, the number of times that one would repeat these movements is always just based on what are you trying to accomplish. Now we're going to change by palms up at about the level of between your belly button and your pubic bone. Breathe in. When your hands get to about the level of your shoulders, turn palms away and then face up. Now make fists. Press your fists together.
I know you know.
Dr. Jahnke,
Yes, sir.
your time is done, so you can finish anytime, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll just do this one more time. Breath in, hold. Exhale, make fists. Press your fists together. Look down. Now we're going to close. And I'm sorry we're not practicing more together, but I think you get the drift of the concepts. And like I said, having a practice isn't doing what I think you should do. It's doing what you've determined that you prefer to do or need to do or like to do. Thank you, everyone. Wish you well. Thank you, Dr. Wang. Back to you.